All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakapadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. And I want to go into a lesson, something that was said, by the beloved brother, elder brother, I'm a one Gabar, all right, GMS, Awakening 144. And he does these shorts, these daily videos, and he says something, that hit, how, hope, okay, makes us fight, whenever there's hope, okay, it gives us something to fight for, okay, and as we have hope, okay, in our power in Yahweh Bashim Shai, as we have an expectation, okay, in righteousness, we have an expectation of a new rulership that's to come to the earth. We have an expectation of us being changed. Well, all these things gives us a hope, okay, to fight for. As we know we have a chance to be joint heirs with our power, with Yahweh Shai, okay, when he returns, we have a hope in these things and we begin, to fight for these things, you know. And I want to go here. I want to start out here in the book of Romans chapter 8 in verse 24. It said, for we are saved by hope, because it's our hope, the driving force, because we believe, because hope and faith go together, so based off what we believe, okay, there's the scripture talk about, their pure influence from the Most High, you know. So as we have hope, when you read it, said, for we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why do he yet hope for? Because faith is what? Believing in the unseen. We haven't seen ourselves being joint heirs with Yahweh Shai, but we hope in it. We haven't seen, those new bodies and what they entail, but we hope in it. We haven't seen a kingdom in the earth ran in righteousness, but we hope in these things, man. And that hope creates a fight, you know, and we can't physically see it, but hope makes us see it here. If we want to be joint heirs, that's why we got to start acting like joint heirs now, because we've been given responsibility within, all right, the kingdom already. But Howard Shah said, what, the kingdom is within us, and we've been already tasked and assigned to responsibilities under Howard Shah, okay? And we should take those things seriously, man, as if we're joint heirs now. You see, when someone really hopes in something, when we really, you know, when we really believe in something, we uh, start acting, okay, in that belief, you know, and we working towards even, in things of right now, okay, we believe in something, we start working towards that thing, Let's say if you want to build a deck, okay, well, first you have to go buy, start getting the tools, you see, you might have never built a deck before. Okay, but the fact that you went and made a step to buy the tools, okay, go buy the material, okay, you start watching the videos about, how, you know, then you begin to put that plan in motion. Well, all that was based off hope, okay, and you built something that didn't exist before, but there were steps leading up to that, and hope had to be involved. You had to see, you had to have a vision in your mind of that being complete. And that what made you go get. Okay? So if we want to be joint heirs, we have to start doing the things that a joint heir would do. And right now, All right, Howard Shah has tasked us with being responsible for the teaching of His word, the correct teaching of His word. You know, being disciplined. You know, not being caught up in the world, because while we have serious responsibility, we can't be caught up in this world. We're joint heirs with Yahweh Shah. Okay, we can't be playing around and entangled and caught up in the BS of this world. No, we joint heirs with Yahweh Shah. Okay, that's why even certain things like, you know, that we don't go to and we don't attend and, you know, we don't have time for it. No, we serving Yahweh Shah, man. I don't got time for that shit. You know, I'm actually serving the King real time. Okay, I'm acting like a joint heir now. Lord will we endure. You see? So if we hope in something, you know, it creates a fight. Okay? It creates action. You see? Even you women, you hope to, you know, be wives of, or you're already a wife of, you know? Well, you should have the mindset of serving him. So if you have a husband, you should already start serving him like a king before he becomes a king. You see? You're the wife of a king. Okay? Well, you should serve him like a king before he becomes a king. Okay? That's your hope. You know? You women, you know, that's in waiting. You don't have a husband, but you should be moving like you do have a husband. Okay? You should start operating as if you're already spoken for. Okay? Because what you hope in, you begin to work towards that. Okay, with action. You see? You know, through prayer and patience. Okay? But our actions should show what we hope in. You see? So reading on this in verse 25 said, but if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience. Okay? With patience wait for it, man. All right? And just, you know, as we start operating in our hope, okay, there's still what a thing of patience, you know, and that tests our sincerity, you know, that these things are not instantaneous, you know, but we continue to, all right, every day, you know, work towards that hope, pour more into what we believe in. All right. Now I want to get this. When you go to the book of Genesis, all right, which our forefather Jacob, okay, he's a um, he's a great example. Okay, of hope. This is Genesis 32 and 4. It says, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And this is an angel. You know, so Jacob, you know, was wrestling an angel. It said to the breaking of day. You know, showing you that there was a long, you know, drawn out wrestling, man. Okay. It says, and when he saw that he prevailed not against him, okay, which is the angel, he said he touched the hollow, okay, of his thigh, okay, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, okay, and he wrestled with him, man. So Jacob had hope in something, you know, which was that promise, okay. So as he's wrestling this angel, okay, he's determined, even as he's injured, you know, because you know, we're not in the perfect situation at all times, okay. You know, our circumstances go up and down, but we still have to wrestle in what we hope for. Okay, a lot of times it's not convenient for us, you know, to study, to read, to, you know, do lessons. You know, it's not convenient, but we gotta fight through it. Certain ailments, you know, certain setbacks, and you know, being uncomfortable. We still got to fight through the uncomfort. Jacob fought when it was uncomfortable, man, because he had hope. And he had a hope in something that was eternal. Okay? And he was in it for the long haul. His mind was made up. He wasn't going to start wrestling until he was blessed. When you keep reading, and it says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. Okay? So the angel like, look, man, it's morning. We've been wrestling all night, the sun coming up, you know? And Jay like, nah, man. I'm not letting you go. I'm not gonna turn you loose, man, till you bless me. His mind was made up. You see, our mind had to be made up. Like my mind is made up, man. I want to be a joint heir with Yahushua, man. My mind is fixed on it. Our barrages are the Lord allowed it. Okay? But as he's giving me, he's giving us, all you brothers, man, he's giving us this grace period, and he's constantly allowing us to wake up every day in our right mind and serve him. We should be fixated on being a joint heir with Yahushua. Determined, like we're gonna wrestle, we're gonna wrestle this thing out. That old man wrestling that nigga. Okay? You see, new situations and the setbacks and different things happen and the uncomforts. Now we're gonna wrestle this thing out. Okay? To be those joint heirs, man. So Jacob, hey, he was wrestling for his crown. That's why when you keep reading, it says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For, all right, it says, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince has thy power with the Most High and with men, and has prevailed. You see, he prevailed because he had, all right, hope. You see, Jacob had that hope, man, so he had that drive to prevail. Okay, you read this in the NLT, it says, your name will no longer be Jacob. The man told him, for now on you will be called Israel, which he got his crown. He got the title. He went from Jacob, the supplanter, to Yasha'Allah, prince of the power. So now this is like Jacob being crowned. He prevailed. You see? So we want to prevail and get those crowns, man. And we got to have hope in that. Then it's a crown of righteousness, man. That we can assist Yahushua in establishing righteousness in the earth, man. And that's a part of the hope as well. Okay? We don't want to just be crowned, just to be kings for the sake of being kings. No, we're kings with a purpose. Okay? It's time to establish righteousness back in the earth, man. Okay? And that's a motivator. You see? So reading on, it says, please tell me your name. Jacob said, it says, I'm going to read verse 20 again. It says, your name will no longer be Jacob. The man told him, from now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought, okay, with a God, all right, which is an angel, and with men, okay, and have won. You see? Or it said, for as a prince has thy power with, all right, the Most High, and with men, and has prevailed. You read that in KJV, So Jacob, he prevailed, all right, and received the crown. And you go into this word prevail, which is call, okay, in the Hebrew, and it goes into prevail, to overcome, to endure, to have power, all right, to be victor. You see? So it says to prevail, to overcome, to endure. And there's precepts that should come to mind first. This is a thing of endurance. All right. And that's one thing, I had to apply in the truth, is to pace yourself, Pace ourselves in this truth. Find us a good pace that we can maintain, we can grow. Okay, this is not a sprint. You see, this is a thing of endurance. Jacob had to wrestle all night, and right now we're in the night. We're in this dark age. It's the real dark ages, man, under Esau. Okay, and Howard Shy, he's going to be like that, the breaking of a new day, like that sunrise of a new day. Okay, so we're wrestling all night, like Jacob. Okay, until that day started, Howard Shy appears, man. Okay, so you go to Matthew 24:13. It says, "But he that shall endure, okay, until the end, the same shall be saved." Okay, so he that endure to the end, the same shall be saved, man. Okay, so this is a thing of endurance. But what is the driving force behind the endurance, man? There's a hope. Okay, there's a hope, man. And then as we constantly endure, we get more and more confidence in our power. You know, not confidence in us, more confidence that our power is dealing with us. See, that's what emboldens us. Okay, it's not the boldness doesn't come from our ability. The boldness comes from our power dealing with us and showing that He's dealing with us, man. That's where the boldness comes from. Okay, and it says, "But he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved," man. You know, and Jacob was an example of enduring to the end. Okay, because when you go into this word endure in the Greek, hupa nano, okay, it says to remain, okay. It said not recede or flee, to not recede or flee, to draw back, okay, or to flee from this calling. You know, as this, it's a light thing for certain men to just put down the plow, recede back into the world, because their hope is gone. You see, if their hope is there, ain't no turning back. You see, if their hope is there, and we have a vision, beyond this current world, okay, ain't no turning back. Turn back to what? Okay, you see, and this truth, we have to be tunnel vision. Okay, and it says to persevere under misfortunes and trials, to hold fast one faith in Hamashiach. Okay, so even under misfortunes and trials, to hold fast to one faith. Even when it look like a loss, man, we have to believe it's a victory somewhere. Even though it look like a loss all across the board, and the Lord takes us through this now, because in Jacob trouble, it's gonna look like loss all across the board, man. But we have to have faith; it's a victory somewhere. We have to be optimistic when it comes to, all right, our faith and our victory. In the victory in our shot, no matter what the circumstances is. Okay, you can be driving down the road, transmission fall out the bottom. You as you come into a rolling stop. You see, we have to have the mindset. Okay, it's a victory somewhere. And I'm speaking to myself. First and foremost, to move with that mindset. Like, okay, it's a victory in the midst of this somewhere. The Lord ain't just got me out here bad. You know, is a victory somewhere. So we have to have this mindset, and because it's a natural reaction for the flesh, in the flesh, to be frustrated, to be defeated. Certain things, especially when you're doing everything you can on point. You on this streak, and you on the up and up, and then something happens out of nowhere. It's that unexpected. But see, we're being conditioned to react and trust, okay, and to be optimistic when it comes to our power, man, and what He's able to do. You know, to understand that this is light work to him, you know. And going back to what we discussed earlier, man, when you have faith in the victory, you immediately start working towards that, man. Okay, well, what can I do now? What's within my power to do? Let me do that. And whatever I can't, let the Lord, hey, the Lord gonna intervene. You know, Lord always gonna meet us somewhere within our hope, and we start to operate in that hope, man. The Lord always gonna meet us somewhere. Okay, you see, if we sincerely believe, man, the Lord never just leaves us out there stranded. Man. Okay, so it says to endure. It says to bear bravely and calmly. All right, ill treatments. You know, or bad treatments, man. You know, so this is Jacob. You know, he had to endure. You know, it wasn't a fair fight. He knocked his hip out of joint. You know, so the fight wasn't fair anymore. You see, and we understand that hey, in this fight, we don't expect fairness, man. Okay, it's gonna be unfair. This nigga finna lie. You know, the way Esau is getting ready to lie. Okay, when it comes to the persecution, you know, of the brothers. All right, he's just finna flat out lie. Okay, so don't expect, you know, it to be fair. Okay, just have a mindset to endure. This is Revelation 3 and 12. I started at 11 says, behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast to endure. You know, because it came to a point where Jacob, he probably wasn't, all he probably was doing was just holding on to. Because when it says, you know, that he wasn't, you know, the angel wasn't getting the best of him, okay, but Jacob just wouldn't quit, you know, and it just came to, you know, you wrestling all night, you know, you to a point to where, hey, Jacob probably was just holding on. You know, he wouldn't go down. You know, he probably just wrapped up. You know, he was just in the clutch, you know, with the angel. You see? So going back to Revelation 3 and 11 said, behold, I come quickly, hold fast that which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. You see, the crowns are at stake, man. You know? This ain't just, you know, you can go missing from your YouTube channel. No. Crowns are at stake, man. Okay? Drawing back into the world, you know, is forfeiting your crown. Okay? To stop fighting and toiling and laboring, that's forfeiting the crown, man. Nah, man. That ain't even no option. Okay, that's why as men, there's certain things that we can't even compromise. Okay? That's why as men, you know, hey, just as we want to be an asset to, you know, your house shop, man, hey, make sure everything around we should as men we should want to make sure everything around us is an asset. You know, as we're, you know, becoming an asset to your house shop. Okay? Because when it comes to these crowns, ain't no compromising, man. Okay? You see? So let's go here to verse 12. It says, him that overcometh, all right, him that overcometh, all right, will I make a pillar in the temple of my power. You know, and we want to be part of that foundation of this righteous kingdom that Yahweh Shai is getting ready to usher into the earth. We want to be part of that foundation, man. You know? And it says, and he's allowing us to do the groundwork now. You know? And it says it shall go no more out. Okay? Which hey, it's gonna be our permanent status. Okay? We'll never be thrown into the world, you know, with no titles, with no power, you know, like we are now. We're gonna be forever within that status and that power, man. Okay, and it says, I will write upon him the name of my power and the name of the city of my power, which is in Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from, all right, my power, and I will write upon him my new name, you know, which is their name refreshed, Yahweh Shai. Okay? Because their name is going to be refreshed in the earth, and we're going to be an extension of their name, of the power and authority of their name. We're going to reign in the power and authority of Yahweh Shai. You see, in the kingdom, it's going to be known that when they see an Israelite man beginning with the first fruit, the day they're going to know that's an extension of Yahweh Shai, the power that just jacked this world up, that made the earth rock to and fro. Okay, that man is an extension of that power. Okay, that's gonna be known, and that's part of our hope, man. What are we, like what are we talking about? What else are we? What are we doing? You know, and I say I just don't see like what else to know this and understand this, and then to be we all have our little folly here and there, but goddamn, like what are we doing? I want to be a part of this. He said, I want this. Ain't no compromising, man. Ain't nothing to talk about. I'm not finna argue with your ass. I'm not finna get entangled in that bullshit that don't matter. Nah, man. What are we doing? Okay? This is Revelation 3 and 21. It says, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, Yahushua has overcome, and has sat down with my Father in his throne, man. So, nah, man, we got too much to hope for. And the more we hope, the more fight that's in us, man. To fight for this thing, man. So that's the point. Just wanted to go into that, Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified. Till next time I say shalom. Going Mashallah. Baba Baba soon, shalom.